I'm going to move on to a segment that we'll be able to talk about in the same vein. And we've kind of touched on this one in the past, and it's how social media has radically changed plastic surgery. And, you know, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but when I started my practice in 2010, believe it or not, there was a lot of plastic surgeons that didn't even have a website. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall. It's like, if you don't have a website, like you're gonna die on the vine. So that was one thing that I really went into. And along those lines, as we talked about in our last segment when we were talking about your business, is I kind of saw how social media was going to be the same. Because at first with social media, it was just social. Like there was no business aspect to it. I mean, you were really early on it because you were using your meteorology and your weather. Yeah. But I didn't notice a lot of business. And suddenly it kind of clicked when I started seeing other people do it. And I started posting, plastic surgery stuff on the little account that I made on Instagram, and just slowly over the years grew that. I think that there's been a lot of big changes that over basically the different years and time frames. That's how it's affected. You know, one of the ones that people always talk about is the explosion of the filters. You know, Instagram started with filters. That actually was, I remember the first Instagram app because I used Snapmatic. Do you guys remember that one?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of a precursor to the Insta. But when Instagram started doing filters that change your appearance, that's when things started to get interesting.
Yeah.
You know, because people would change their appearance on these filters and be like, you know what, I like the filter better than real life. And, you know, I personally never have had anybody come in and take a filtered picture of themselves.
I was just gonna ask you that.
I've never had that happen, but I know that people use those filters, and I know that they see changes in their body, and that gets the spark. It's like, I can look like this with a filter. Is there any way to make myself look like this in real life? And so I do think that the whole filter plastic surgery push thing is maybe a little bit overblown, but it is real.
Yeah.
You know, that I ask you girls using filters. I mean, has that ever crossed your mind? I mean, not to be too personal, but
I think so.
I mean, yeah. I think if you're being honest, absolutely. I mean, I think that has something to do with the filter that smooths out a little bit. I just need to get some more Botox.
That prompts girls to get Botox for sure, or like lips.
The other one that
is a big one.
The other way that that social media changed plastic surgery, and I wish I'd got on this one earlier. I did get in a little bit early, but not in the very beginning, is plastic surgery as influencers.
Yeah.
I didn't see that one coming. It's obvious now, but I was on social media, and I think if I had just really started posting earlier that, like Dr. Miami, like he's the one that everyone considers.
Well, doctors in general, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot of doctors that are influencers.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I feel like you can just trust anything that comes out of a doctor's mouth, though.
I'm going to say smart stuff.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. If they tell you something.
I do think that the patient empowerment was a big deal. When the taboo of plastic surgery was taken away because just the information was out there, you didn't have to go search for it like a web page, like a website. It was just out there. I think that I think it was good and bad. I mean, I think that I think that it might have pushed people into plastic surgery maybe that didn't really want it, or maybe before they're ready. But I do think there was some empowerment to that information. Suddenly everything became known. There was the mystery of it.
Well, yeah, because you would say, okay, did that woman have this done or whatever? It now made it not normal.
You can tell now.
But it's not as she probably
like the mystery's gone. And I think that that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, you also got the TikTok effect. When TikTok made a meteoric rise, you started to get a lot of young people getting exposed to these things in plastic surgery, and we saw a shift. We saw young people looking for procedures that you didn't see in decades past. Zoom effect, that was a big one. When the pandemic hit, Zoom is essentially a type of social media, and people would see their picture on there and they'd be like, I don't like the way I look.
Yeah.
I want to go get something done. I do think there's some bad effects too. I mean, do you remember when we talked about that Dr. Roxy? She was the one that was the influencer that was live streaming surgery.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear about her?
She made a liposuction mistake?
Yeah.
Was she a doctor or she was?
She was a plastic surgeon.
Oh.
Yeah. She was doing live streams of her surgery. And,
is that allowed?
It is.
Okay.
As long as the patient agrees to it. Yeah. but she was losing focus, and she ended up injuring a lot of patients.
Yeah, she was being like an entertainer, not a surgeon.
Yeah, she was being an entertainer, not a surgeon. And you know, I had those moral dilemmas myself when, you know, it was kind of early on. I was like, I could do videos of surgery, and that probably would be a huge hit. Really, honestly, the one thing that stopped me was just the platforms were so restrictive. You know, anything with blood on it was getting taken down. I was like, you know, I'm not going to do all this work. And I felt like I could do it safely. You know, maybe shoot the video and then dub it later instead of talking to the camera, like where you're not paying attention.
Voice it over.
So, but yeah, we've seen social media change plastic surgery to the core. I mean, but you know, you could say that about almost every industry.
Yep.
You know, social media has changed the world. So.